If anyone has perspective on America's role in the world, it's our next guest. It's former Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. She served in that role in the first Trump administration, and she serves as our guest in the center ring tonight. Welcome, Nikki, and I can tell you it's been a real honor to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Well, I can tell you, I remember first encountering you back when I was on the Homeland Security Committee in Congress, and you testified about not having Gitmo transferred to South Carolina. What a shock, you were against it. And I remember how articulate you were and how much of a leader you were as a governor. And then, of course, your time as the UN Ambassador was just a terrific time, and you did a great job. So your perspective on our subject tonight, and that is the world stage and what America's role is on a world stage, I think is really important. So I'd love to hear your take about what your view is, given all the stuff going on around the world today, what America's role should be and how should we be implementing it?
Well, thank you, John. I can tell you, I really got clarity on that when I was at the United Nations, because what I saw is, when America speaks, the world listens. When America acts, the world follows. And what America does, the world tries to be. So it's really important that we always have moral clarity. And I think that there's no shortage of issues in the world. And we see that, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine situation, whether it's China with Taiwan, whether it's what's happening in Gaza, all of those things, American leadership matters. And I think in the last administration, it was taking one of appeasement and going quiet. And this one is a bull in the china shop. And, between both of those, what I will tell you is you have to have one, moral clarity, and two, you have to have trust with your allies. That's going to be the most important thing going forward, because they will follow you if they trust you, and they will listen to you if they trust you. And one of the things I did at the United Nations was we blew up a lot of things at the United Nations, and we called out a lot of things. But every one of those ambassadors, friend or foe, knew I would always tell them the truth. And I think that's the key, is America needs to have trust when it comes to what we say, what we do, and we always need to be prepared to follow through on it.
I always told the agents and all the task forces I ran that we need to project strength so the bad guys will respect us. And there's a difference between strength and something else. But projecting strength on the world stage, I think, sometimes prevents a lot of things from happening. And I look at, Putin going into Ukraine, and I look at what happened in Gaza. And I just don't think if America was projecting more strength back at that time, that those bad actors would do that. And I'd like to get your take on that as well.
They weren't scared of us.
Right.
I mean, that's what it came down to. After Afghanistan, it was such a debacle that it basically gave all of our enemies around the world, their thought was, if ever there was a time to move, it's now. And they did, because they didn't think we'd have the backs of our friends. And I think that played out. Whether it was Ukraine, America was slow to act, slow to respond, and not decisive. Whether it was with Israel, America said that they were going to have Israel's back and then started to pull back on it. And so it was a field day for Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Now is the time to self-correct. And I think that, what we do is we have to be decisive in what we say, and more decisive in how much we're going to have the backs of our friends. If we're going to have the back of Ukraine's sovereignty, then we need to mean it. If we're going to have the back of Israel, then we need to let them lead and we support. If we're going to have the backs of Taiwan, we need to understand that China's going to give us a hard time, but they are testing us right now. Everybody talks about the first 100 days of an administration, and that's a honeymoon. Well, it's a honeymoon domestically, but it's a test internationally, because all of our friends are waiting to see how much of a friend we're going to be. And all of our enemies are waiting to see, do we really mean what we say? And are we going to have strength about it? And so we are in the test phase right now of how countries look at us and what they think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And listen, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the other part of it, because it's clear to me that you believe America needs to have a strong role on the world stage. And my opinion is, I don't think there's a choice in that, right? But there's also a way about how we spend our money and how we are stewards of our money, especially at a time when we have such gigantic budget deficits at home. And a big issue was blown up as far as USAID. That is the program that gives aid to other countries. And You were in a catbird seat for that at the United Nations. So I'd like to get your take on the program in general, then the problems they found on it and what the heck we should do about it.
Well, first of all, I think this is a good practice across the board. Every one of those agencies has gotten too bloated, too big. A lot of the employees there have thought that they couldn't be fired, and everybody needs to have accountability. And so I think that it's a great wake up call for every agency. I can tell you, when we got to the United Nations, in the first year, we cut $1 billion off the top of just the UN budget. You know, we looked into the United States mission at the United Nations. We started cutting. We did hiring freezes just because it's good practice. USAID, I can tell you, is a massive slush fund. And it's not just a slush fund for countries around the world to get their pork projects. It was a slush fund, as you know, for many members of Congress. They would have their pet projects and they would go and give money out. And there was no transparency. And I think if there's anything we need to see in government today, taxpayers deserve to know how their money is spent. You know, as governor, I put all of the spending of every agency online for all South Carolinians to see. I would love to see the federal government put all spending online so that we don't have to hear about it on the news, or we don't have to hear about it from Doge, but we can actually go online and see exactly who's spending. And I took it a step further. Any pet project, I made a legislator have to put their name next to it. So they had to be accountable for that project. And I think that's the same thing in the federal government. If congressional members have to put their name next to things, they're going to think twice about whether they want their constituents to see it. And that's going to bring some accountability to the process as well.
No, I couldn't agree with you more about the lack of oversight of these programs. And it seems like USAID is a microcosm for a lot of things in the government spending that's now getting a bright light shined on it. And I think that's long overdue. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the good things that USAID does. I mean, they help it sometimes. And so what's the other balance of that? What's the side of the good things that you can accomplish with things like the USAID program if it's properly administered?
Well, I think that, you know, that's the problem, is because when you go and you poison the well with a lot of projects that don't matter, you hurt the good ones on what they were intended to be. I actually do agree that putting this under the State Department where it can have more accountability is a good thing, but PEPFAR is a good example of that. PEPFAR has really saved millions of lives from HIV and AIDS, and that was considered one of the most successful programs under the Bush administration, and that's helped us all globally. So you can look at things like that and see where it does do some good. You know, whether there's infrastructure that helps with our friends that need it so that they don't have you know, any sort of problems domestically for themselves, but it needs to be a win-win. One of the things that I really pushed in the Trump administration when I was there was I wanted all foreign aid to be listed. And it was after Israel had, you know, the world pretty much condemned us for moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And I put a book together and I told my staff to list all 193 countries. The next column, I told them to put the percentage that those countries voted with the U.S. and against the U.S. And I had the last column be how much foreign aid we gave them. And I took that book and I gave it to President Trump, and he lost his mind. He was flipping pages, yelling out countries. And I said to him then, I said, I'm not saying that we give foreign aid based on a percentage vote of the UN, but that should be one of the things we look at. Quit trying to buy friends. Quit trying to pay off enemies. If we're going to be a partner, it has to be a win-win, and America has to benefit from it. And that really goes back to the transparency I was talking about. Is if you can't show the American people what we're doing and why we're doing it, we shouldn't be doing it.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And you know, there's for everything there is a balance. And that is USAID in particular. There's some good things that happen, but we've got to have transparency. And I thank you so much for your time. I could talk to you for hours. Thank you for your public service all these years. And we certainly hope to see you back in the arena again soon, my friend.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much. It was great to be with you.